Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening. My name is Mohd Shukri Hajinoor from the Faculty of Economics and Management, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, the National University of Malaysia. Today we're going to study about non-tariff barriers. Policies other than tariffs that restrict international trade. So suppose this is Shukri, we're going to study non-Shukris. Absolute quota is physical restriction on quantity of goods imported during a specific time period. Import licenses are used to administer quota. So government allocates import licenses to importers, permitting them to import products only up to the prescribed limit, regardless of market demand. So for a country, global quota permits specified quantity of goods imported each year, but does not specify from where products are shipped or who imports, plagued by accusations of favoritism. Selective quota, import quota allocated to specific countries may lead to domestic monopoly of production and higher prices. So let's look at the graph here for quota. Suppose US is a small country in terms of cheese market. So under free trade, prices in both EU and United States is $2.50. This is the graph for United States. Demand, United States for cheese, supply, United States for cheese, and this is supply from the EU. The cheaper producer, lower. So this is free trade. Under free trade, United States produces 1. This is supply. Produces 1. Consumes 8. So 7 is the import. With quota, suppose quota is 3 units. The quota is limitation, quantitative limitation. The limit to the effect of quantity. 3, so above free trade price, total US supply is US production plus quota. So the supply curve shifts to the right because of quota. So what happened? Now, this is the production has gone up, supply curve, from 1 to 3, whereas consumption falls from 8 to 6. So now, imports is only 3 with quota. So reduced imports. Before we go on, I'm going to explain to you about the concept. There is a equivalence of tariff and quota. Just now we've just seen the impact of quota is as given. 3 units can be imported. That's the quota. There is an equivalence of quota and tariff. If we given 3 is the number of units that can be imported under quota, we can find equivalent tariffs for that. So in this case, the equivalent tariff is $5. You can implement tariff, let's say 5 to 50. You can implement tariff of 250 with the effect of the price will go up to 5 to 50 tariff. You can implement that. You get similar result with quota, which is imports. Total imports is 3 only. So, however, the concept that I want to bring to you here, when we want to draw the quota, it is different from when we draw a tariff. Okay, let's begin with tariff. When we want to draw a tariff, okay, this is normal. We do the demand curve and supply curve, and we do this line, draw this line. This is supply of the world, or in this case, supply from EU, which is the lower producer. So 1, 2, 3, and we get this. Production at 1, consumption at 8, so 7 is the import. That's under tariff. Free trade, not yet tariff. Free trade, we're drawing a tariff now. Free trade. Under free trade, we are drawing tariff now. Still free trade. Now, tariff of, say, specific tariff 250. So we just bring up 250 and draw this line. And we get this. 6 is consumption, and 3 is the production. Just draw that line because it's given to us 250. However, this is the difference. With quota, we do not know ahead of time the price. We don't know. Is it here, 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 the line? We don't know. We know it later. So by doing what? Given that 3 is the number of units that can be imported, the quota. So we bring it up. Yeah, this is 3. Okay, we bring it up. From here, okay, bring up, 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 until it touches. Oh, touches here, intersect here. So, so we draw this line. It's $5. We know it later. We don't know ahead of time. With quota, we do not know ahead of time the price. Given to us, the quota, the number of units that can be imported, given to us 3. So bring up. Here, is it here? Is it here? Not yet, not yet. Oh, okay, until it touches this line. And this line too. So it's 5. So that's the difference between drawing a tariff and a quota. A tariff, we know ahead of time the price because it's given to us. The amount of tariff is 250. But with quota, we don't know the price. It's given to us the quantity. Okay. Now let's look at the welfare effect. So all this inside the graph. So with free trade, consumers, this is consumer surplus, big one. Now with tariff, consumer lost A, B, C, and D. A is no problem. What consumer lost A goes to producer. Previously producer surplus is here only. Now producer surplus is here. A is a redistribution effect. Redistribution effect from consumers to producer. Producer gets this. What about B? B doesn't go to producer. Consumer lost it. It goes to no one. B is one of the deadweight loss. One of the deadweight losses that we're going to study here. B doesn't go to anyone. B is a protective effect. Because production increases from 1 to 3 because of higher prices afforded by quota. So this is inefficient production. So B that doesn't go to anyone, B is a deadweight loss because of inefficient production. Increased but inefficient. So B. C. C, in the case of quota, we don't call it government revenue or revenue because C can go to several types of parties or people, people or producers, depending on their bargaining power or bargaining strength, and how the tariff are administered. So see, we're gonna look at this after this, but let's go to D. D is another deadweight loss, because D, consumer lost it. A, B, C, D, consumer lost it, but D doesn't go to anyone. D goes to no one. So this is another deadweight loss. What happened? Consumption in the country falls from 8 to 6. 8 to 6 because of higher prices due to the quota. So this is consumption effect. Previously it was a protective effect. This one is consumption effect. Another deadweight loss because it doesn't go to anyone, just like B doesn't go to anyone. So two deadweight losses. So now let's go to discuss about C. We call it quota rents. We don't call it tariff. I'm repeating. We call it quota rents. So goes to who? Okay. Under tariff, straightforward. The revenue goes to the government under tariff. But under quota, who gets the quota rents? Depends on bargaining strength to get the import license and how quota are administered. 6 possibilities. Number 1, there are 6 possibilities. Who gets the C? Under tariff, clearly goes to the government, but this is quota. First possibility, if local importer has monopoly power, it buys the 3 units at world prices at $2.50 and sell it at $3, collecting all the quota rent. So the monopoly importer in that country will get all the quota rent. Second possibility, if there are many importers competing to buy from foreign producers or exporters, despite they must pay prices higher than world price of $2.50, foreign producers and exporters will get some portion of the quota rent, while importers will get some portion. So that's split. Split based on that competition of getting the split will be among the 2 foreign producers and local importers. So number 3 possibility, if government implements a scheme to distribute import license among competing importers, QR will go to those importers, all those importers that were granted or given the import license. That's number 3. Number 4, if the government auctions the import license, QR will go to the government, because an importer able to buy at world price would willingly pay $5 minus $2.50, would be willingly to pay this much. Buy from local, international market, which is world price $2.50, willingly to pay $2.50. $2.50 for a license to import 1 unit. So total amount government could sell import licenses will be the area of C. The total government could sell. So here government gets it. The monopoly gets it, split between the 2. And number 3, importers, all the importers that got the license. Number 4, the government gets it. Number 5, if government awards import license based on first come, first served basis, area C may end up an additional deadweight loss. We've got 2 deadweight loss already, B and D. This may become an additional deadweight loss. Because why? Because importers have the incentives to lobby to get the license. So the value of license to import 1 unit is approximately 250. They will spend resources equal to that amount to get the license. So it's another deadweight loss. So this is loss of welfare to the society, to the country. Number 6, if quota is administered by exporting country, for example, voluntary export restraint, this is one country. It's not really voluntary, but they have negotiation. Because one country B says we have trade deficit because of you, country A. So you must do something. So they have gone into an agreement for this country A to restrain exports to that country, to reduce, to contain, restraints export to that country. So the terminology for that is voluntary export restraint by exporting country, VER. So foreign producers and exporter get the QR because they administer the quota. They tell how much, the quantity that they will export, and as a result, the price go up. So they collect all of them. So the 6 possibilities. Next, quotas versus tariff. I mentioned earlier there's a equivalence of tariff and quota that holds as long as there is no change in the market condition in the country, no demand increase. When demand is growing, an absolute quota restricts volume of imports by greater amount than equivalent import tariff. Quota will be more restrictive. So we're going to see here, quota is actually more restrictive. Quota is worse. Tariff is bad. Not as bad as quota. Quota is the worst thing. We can see that when there is an increase in demand here. So the equivalence of tariff and quota will not hold anymore when there is an increase in demand here. So figure 5.2a, tariffs of 1,000 raises the price by 1,000. Okay, let's begin with, this is the tariff and quota. Demand curve of United States, supply curve of United States. This is free trade. Now, with tariff of 1,000 specific tariff, so this is the new line, increases the price. As a result, so you can see without now previously produces 1, consumes 8. This is 7 import. Now it's tariff. Okay, with tariff now produces only 3, but consume 6. So now 3 is the quantity of imports, 3 because of tariff. We can show you that the equivalent of tariff and import that I mentioned 2 times earlier. Here, look at this. Demand, supply, and free trade. Under tariff, bring up the 3. Suppose 3 is the amount of tariff. Okay? The amount of tariff, the amount of quota given to us. Quota is 3 units only. So, get the 3. This is. Bring up. Because we don't know, in the case, I'm repeating, okay? In the case of quota, we don't know. Where is it? Is it here, the line? Is it here? Because it's not given to us the price, but it's given to us the quantity that can be imported. So 3, bring up. Aha, touches the demand side. So we can draw this line. Aha, 7,000. Same. That's the equivalence of tariff and quota, or the equivalence of quota and tariff. But that equivalence of tariff and quota will not hold when there's an increase in demand. So let's go here. When an increase in demand with the tariff, the demand curve shift to the right, also quota shift to the right. So now, here is the relevant point of intersection. So, and D is a consumption. So, United States consumes 8, produces 3, just like before. This is quota. This is was free trade. This is the tariff. Now, look at here. Increase in total imports. Let me repeat. Under free trade, in the case of tariff, produces 1 but consume 8. So 7 is the import. Okay, 7 import. Now, if demand increases, demand curve shifts to the right with tariff. So, additional. So, previously it was 3 only with tariff. When there is no increase in demand, 3 only the imports. Of course, reduced from the 7 under free trade. This free trade, 3 imports only with tariff. Now, when demand increases, here is the intersection point. The line is here. So, increases to 5. Here. Here is the import. And then, next, let's look at quota. Quota, as I've shown you many times, this is the new demand curve because of increase in demand. So we have to bring this, here, the intersection they want to bring up 3. Yeah, intersects here. So we bring this line. 7,500. So you see, the price has increased in the case of quota. And yet, the amount of import remains 3 because of quota. The quota is 3. The amount of imports remains 3. Whereas in the case of tariff, with increased demand, the imports is now 5. Here only 3, absolutely 3, because that's the quota. Only 3 imports. But at a high, very high price, 7,500. So, quota is more restrictive than tariff. So, tariff is, free trade is good. The best is free trade. Tariff is bad. Quota is worse. So, in a growing market, an import tariff is less restrictive tariff barrier than equivalent import quota. With an import tariff, the adjustment that occurs in response to an increase in domestic demand is an increase in the amount of product that is imported, increased in response to the increase in demand, increase from 3 to 5. With an import quota, on the other hand, an increase in demand induces an increase in product price. The price increase leads to a rise in production and a fall in consumption of import competing goods, while the level of imports remains constant at 3. Sorry. So we're done with quota. We've seen that quota is more restrictive than tariff. We saw the equivalence, but when demand increases, that equivalence of tariff and quota does not hold anymore, and we can show you that quota is more restrictive, it's bad, it's worse than tariff. Now, this is reading. Tariff rate quota, two components, allows specified number of goods to be imported at lower tariff rate within quota rate. Any imports above this level face higher tariff rate or the over quota rate. Administration of tariff quotas, license on demand allocation. If demand for license is less than quota, system operates on first come, first serve basis. If demand exceeds quota, import volume requested is reduced proportionally among all applicants. Allocation may also be based on historical market share or auctions. Historical market share is like this company has been a major buyer, a major importer in that country, so the government may continue to award import license based on that historical market share. To tariff rate quota, two-tier tariff still. WTO requires members to convert all NTBs to tariffs, to convert all NTBs to tariff, and to negotiate those tariffs down. During transition, so tariff rates, quotas are permitted. So we're not going to go into that. This is just story. Two-tier tariffs, still stories. Sugar tariffs are bittersweet. Yes, sugar growers receive government guaranteed minimum prices for sugar, but this attracts imported sugar. To prevent imports, the United States implements tariff rate quota. Tariff rate quota. U.S. price of sugar almost twice world market price. Many candy firms that use sugar have left the country. Those that remain pass prices on to the consumers. Now, export quota. We've been discussing about import quota. Now, export quota. Governments enter as form of voluntary export restraint agreements, VER, I just mentioned earlier. Moderates intensity of international competition tend to be more costly than tariffs. Unequal effect to equivalent import quotas, except implemented by exporting nation. 1980s, 67% of cost to United States consumers of this restraint captured by foreign exporters as profits. So, U.S. consumers pay more, but the gains are captured by foreign exporters with export quota. You're going to see. Japanese auto restraints put brakes on United States motorists. United States and Japan agreed to limit Japanese exports for 3 years, beginning in 1981, purpose to help U.S. auto industry, but large Japanese car makers largely unaffected, increased prices and earned record profits. In 1984, United States consumers paid extra $660 per Japanese auto and $1,300 per US auto. 44,000 US jobs saved at cost of $100,000 per job. So that's a huge welfare cost to the society. So to limit outsourcing, Labour lobbied for domestic content. Now, next is domestic content. We have just finished the export quota. Now, another subtopic, domestic content. So to limit outsourcing of production jobs, manufacturing jobs to other countries, Labour in the United States lobbied for domestic content requirements. Minimum percentage of a goods value must be produced locally to qualify for zero tariff rates. This pressure domestic and foreign firms to use domestic inputs and workers can result in higher input and product price and loss of competitiveness. Subsidized by domestic consumers. Actually, this domestic content requirement, we'll see this. Okay. This is Toyota quantity and price of Toyota per unit. So this is United States. Australia imports 500 from Japan, Toyota, under free trade. This is free trade. Supply of Japan by SJ of Toyota. This is demand of Australia. So, under free trade, Australia imports 500 units of Toyota. Japanese resource owners gets C and D, which is, you can calculate $12 million. Now, with domestic content requirement, that forces Toyota to go to Australia to open a factory to manufacture car in Australia. So, at higher wages in Australia. So, price goes up to $33,000. So, as a result, demand falls to 300 only. Because production shifted from Japan to Australia, Japanese resource owners lose C and D. Japanese resource owners lose C and D, which is 12 million. You can calculate that. Australian resource owners gain A and C. Australian resource owners gain A and C, which is, you can calculate that, $9.9 million, minus income paid to Japanese managers there and return to the Japanese or Toyota's capital inside there. However, income gain by Australian resource owners inflict cost onto the Australian consumers. Which is, consumers lose A and B. Because previously, this is consumer surplus under free trade. Consumer surplus. Now, consumers has lost A and B, which is 3.6 million. You can calculate that. B is actually a dead weight loss. B. Dead weight loss of 900,000. A is a redistribution of welfare from consumers, domestic consumers to domestic producers of 2.7 million. Because B, why it is dead weight loss? B does not go to anyone. B goes to no one. So B is a dead weight loss. So, A, domestic content requirement leads to a rise in production costs and prices to the extent that manufacturers are forced to locate production facilities in high-cost nations. Although the content requirement helps preserve domestic jobs, it imposes welfare loss or losses on the domestic consumers, A and B. And losses to the society, to the country, B, is the deadweight loss. This is to the consumers, A and B. This is to the country, include part of it. Part of the consumer loss. B is loss to the society, loss of welfare. Here, let me show something not mentioned here. Which one is worse? Is it domestic requirement? Quota has two, tariff has two parts of deadweight loss, two here. Quota is worse. Okay, to deadweight loss if the demand does not increase. If demand increases at high price and deadweight loss still here, quota is worse. However, domestic requirement only one section of the loss, deadweight loss. So it's not as bad as tariff, or definitely not as bad as quota. So now next subtopic, subsidies may take the form of outright cash disbursement, tax concession, insurance arrangement, and subsidized loans. We're going to study two types here. Domestic production subsidy first and export subsidy second. So first, domestic production subsidy result in higher output, redistributive effects, increase in producers' surplus for more efficient producers, deadweight loss, protective effect, lower welfare losses than tariff and quota. We're going to show you that. Financed by taxpayers. Okay, here it is. This is domestic production subsidy. Focus on the left only. And export subsidies here next. So on the left. Suppose initially this is SD, D, and S here. This is supply and demand of steel in the United States. Steel and price of steel. Suppose that initial supply and demand equilibrium is 430. Equilibrium here is 430. Here. Equilibrium of supply and demand in the United States. This is autarky. It's 430 per ton. Suppose US is a small buyer, it means does not affect the world market. Small player, small buyer does not affect world supply and demand. So under free trade, this is under free trade, this is free trade, supply of the world, and this is the intersection. United States consumes 14 and produces 2. So 12 is the import. Consume 14, produces 2 only. So 12 is total number of imports. Okay, now with production subsidy, this was free trade. Suppose subsidy is $25 per ton. So that gives cost advantage to United States producers. As a result, supply curve shifts to the right with subsidy, shift to the right. So domestic production expands from 2 previously under free trade to 7. With subsidy.